Okay, I started in television at the BBC in 1970 after effectively coming straight out of college or school. I did my A-levels and went straight to the BBC. I chose to do that because I didn't particularly want to go to university and then join the BBC. I spent about 5 years working in television studios at the television centre, transferred to network department and worked there for a few more years. In that time there, I was lucky enough to go to Innsbruck for the 76 Winter Olympics, I think it was. And whilst I was out there, I met a company called Trillion, who are also providing facilities out there. On coming back, somebody who had worked at Trillion approached me and said, would I be interested in working for Trillion? And I said, yeah, I could be. And so I went for an interview and was offered the job then and there, and effectively started working for Trillion Video OBs. And I worked on OBs for quite a few years. It must have been nearly 10 years, during which time it changed a lot. Trillion, in the meantime, the holding company, acquired Limehouse Studios at Canary Wharf. So part of the process, the OB company was moved down to Canary Wharf, and as I was getting a little bit tired of a lot of travelling up and down the country, I decided to take up a job as technical manager in the studios at Canary Wharf for Limehouse. That worked fine until such time as Trillion sold the site at Canary Wharf to the Docklands development people, which meant they had to get out. So we set up acquiring premises first of all in the Trocadero, and that's where post-production and a small studio moved to. And then I think it was maybe a year or two later, Wembley site came on the market. Lee Film Internationals were here, and it was decided to buy this site, and it needed a lot of work, redeveloping, so that took a while, but we got it back working as TV studios. I was soon a chief engineer rather than technical manager, which was good, and that worked fine until Limehouse went into receivership. And then after a short term with the official receivers, Fountain acquired the place, kept me on, and after a few years I became chief engineer with Fountain until I retired. When the studios were built, they were built to a very high standard because they were built as TV studios, not sound stages, which means that a lot of criteria are much more critical. Nowadays, it is still a case that this studio is of a very high technical quality. Physically, the way it was built, i.e. the sound isolation between the two stages, the facilities that are provided, and everything else, technical crew. Yeah, these studios' unique capability of becoming one of the largest purpose-built TV studios in the country has meant that a lot of the shows we have done have been the biggest and the best of that type of show. Saturday night light entertainment shows going out live on one of the major broadcast networks is its forte. The reason that Limehouse had to move out of the studios at Canary Wharf was because Canary Wharf was in the process of being heavily developed, and Trillion was offered a suitable sum of money for them to get out. As a result, they didn't want to close the business down, so they looked for alternative premises. So the Trocadero was found. It was the third floor at the Trocadero Centre, and that had to be fitted out for post-production and a small studio to service the programmes we were doing then, which is the Business Daily programme. but that obviously wasn't the full studio capability. So when the Wembley studios came in the market, which were currently at that time owned by Lee Film International and used as a film studio, Trillian decided that it was a good investment to buy that, and so they bought the site. When Limehouse had to move out of Canary Wharf, I was involved majorly in the technical installation at the Trocadero to get the post-production facilities up and running, and the studio which serviced Business Daily as well. After that was up and running, it was about that time that they acquired the Wembley site, and as a result my skills were turned to this place to coordinate and get the installation of all the technical facilities in these studios. And it then led naturally for me to stay here, operating as a technical manager, but also being chief engineer. When we moved to this site, it was, as you can imagine, a film studio site. As a result, there was a tremendous amount of buildings which are all old studios in a very poor condition, and two big studios, which are the current studios, which were in reasonable condition. So the rest of the site was demolished, knocked down, and then a lot of effort going into refurbishing these two studios. As the studios had been used for film, the television studio aspects of it had been well and truly destroyed. Like the studio floor in the studios, in film they have wooden floors and they nail stuff to the floor. That's what they did here. They put a floor down and nailed 6-inch nails through 4 inches of wood, which resulted in the TV floor being totally destroyed. So one of the things that had to be done was to relay the complete TV floor again. There was no fixed lighting, so a fixed lighting grid, a saturated lighting grid had to go in. There were no control rooms, so control rooms had to be built. The offices were very poor condition. Offices had to be refurbished. Dressing rooms, lower film dressing rooms, which weren't really up to the expected quality of TV dressing rooms. So almost everything had to be replaced, apart from the structure of the building. The first shows that Limehouse did in these studios, if I remember right, it was food and drink. And it was, again, pioneering days trying to get TV programmes out of here again when everything had been stripped out. And as we all know, the bookings department tends to sell the studio before it's been finished being built. But we managed to get it out. We used to do the post-production tidy up of the recording on site here as well. So when it left site, it was a complete programme. The other programmes we did were MasterChef, The Day to Day. We did shows for Hat-Trick like Have I Got News for You? Most of the shows in the brief years that Limehouse was here were coming back on a regular basis. The Word was a good one because it is high profile, maybe not for the right reasons, but it was very high profile. Some interesting situations, some very topical things at the time, some very groundbreaking episodes. But basically it was a good show. I think we did it live via microwave link because there were no lines in those days here. And it was just good fun, hard work. The other programmes we did quite a few Have I Got News for You, which was always great fun to do. I liked doing the show. It was a long show compared to what gets transmitted. Certainly in those days there was no unedited version. Very funny. It was still relatively new, so it still wasn't going tired or anything. And the same presenter every time, which was unique. Not so much now. We did quite a lot of stuff for Hat-Trick, some sitcoms. One of the last shows I remember under Limehouse days, or one of the more easily rememberable, was when Freddie Mercury did one of his pop videos in the studio. I don't know why I call them pop videos. Historically, not many people know this, but Trillian owned or managed the people who owned Trillion managed Queen, the group, and they split up for various reasons in the early 70s, but as a result Trillion did get associated with many more of their videos over the years, and I worked on many of the videos for Queen. So it was with great news that we heard they were coming to studio to shoot a video, and it was Freddie Mercury. And just before they turned up, there was lots of things about, oh, we need a dressing room, you know, with a bed in it for Freddie to lie down in, things like this, which sounds a little bit strange at the time. And it was great. Yes, we did it. Freddie didn't look too well, as we all know, but at the time we, you know, didn't really think about it. I've seen sections of it on videos, documentaries recently of it when it was shot here, and actually my daughter was in the background of one of those shots because she was working here, work experience at the time. But yes, it was all very interesting, and it wasn't until a few weeks later, than driving to work, we'd heard that Freddie had died. So it was with great shame, you know, to hear that, but it was also great to be involved in his last one as well, last video. It was late 1992, and halfway through a recording of a show for, I think it was Celador, the men in suits turned up, and we found out that Trillion had gone into receivership, and the fact that the studios were obviously under receivership as well. So the official receivers obviously wanted to try and sell it as a going business. So from the day they came in, they were trying to come up with a business plan to be able to sell the studios as a going concern to a new buyer. They decided that once they had closed the place down, which was on New Year's Eve, that they would like to keep me on as a caretaker type place while they found a new buyer. So I was still employed, unlike almost everybody else in the company, while they found a new buyer. And one of the last shows we did was the Word Planet 24 Productions. The receivers, while they couldn't find another buyer straight away, leased the site back to Planet 24 Productions so they can make the next series of the Word. The Limehouse company, as a company, was wound up. When the official receivers came into the studios to say that Trillion, the holding company, had gone into liquidation, into receivership, and as a result these studios were as well, obviously we were all absolutely dismayed. We're halfway through a production and everybody wanted to know if they were going to get paid for the rest of the day or whatever. And the official receivers did say, yes, we'll make sure that everybody gets paid for today, which they did do. The crew were then not required to come in while they tried to see if they could sell the business as a going concern. So this was the 21st, 22nd December, something like this. So for the next several days, I helped with the receivers to try and understand what studio facilities were, because they're accountants, they're not TV studio people. Some of the directors stayed behind as well because I have legal obligations too, but most of the crew were released. I was obviously keen to keep the place going because I wanted to stay in employment, so I did all I could to help with coming up with a business plan, trying to help what was where, to help them understand how television studios worked. But on New Year's Eve, at about 7 o'clock in the evening, they said to me that they can no longer hope to sell it as a going concern. So they chose to make everybody redundant. So at 7 o'clock, they wanted to phone everybody up and say they'd lost a job. I asked if I could do that because I prefer people to hear it from an employee rather than a nameless suit. Very hard for everybody concerned. Obviously, I didn't particularly enjoy it, but being told on New Year's Eve, just before you go out to a party, that you haven't got a job, you know, it was very, very tough. But the receivers did keep me on. Thankfully, they didn't make me redundant, because so they needed somebody who knew the studios to help sell it. So for the next 5 months, it turned out to be in the end, I was here showing prospective buyers around, explaining what the studios were about, what a studio is to some people. It's amazing the range of people coming in, think they, well, it'd be nice. I'd like to own a studio. And some who obviously never could, and some who obviously really could. And it was most likely, I don't know, March, maybe April, must have been March, I think, when Fountain came around and I gave them the guided tour. And I didn't think much more about it until they came back again and had another look. So it then became apparent that they were buying the place, and before they actually had signed all the paperwork, that they were allowed in to start kind of refurbishing the kitchen and other places like that. So I was watching it go from working TV studio into the hands of the receivership, being leased back to Planet 24 to make the word, to seeing buyers come in, to eventually being sold, and then being told that Fountain wanted to keep me on as well. So that was a light at the end of the tunnel. It was great. The first day when Fountain had ownership wasn't really that different, because they had turned up many days and weeks beforehand doing various bits and pieces, started refurbishment of various bits and pieces. So it wasn't like this is a magic day in that sense. So it was just a part of getting familiarisation. I wasn't too sure exactly what role they were expecting me to play, but it soon became apparent that I was going to be one of the boys, and we all chipped in, pulling all the old stuff out, getting rid of what we could to make space for all the new stuff. My local knowledge did help, that not to cut through cables which we were going to need later, but unfortunately didn't always work. But in the long run, I found my slot in the company, and that worked for quite a few, I think it might have been a year or two, until the top man, Dave Spencer, moved on, and I became chief engineer. Some of the first shows I can remember that we did at Fountain, I think the first big show was Hearts of Gold with Esther Ranson, where half the studio was a proper TV interview studio, but the main guest, who had the Heart of Gold, arrived at the studio thinking it was something totally different, be it a swimming pool or Planet Cricklewood or other things. And it wasn't until I sat down that they lifted the wall away or something away, and they revealed to be in a big TV studio. It was our first use of mini cams in various places around to catch them in as they come in, and obviously their eventual surprise. So that was a good one. We did a programme, The Day to Day, again another version of it. I don't know what happened to the first one, but it was similar construction. We eventually got some permanent transmission lines in that would enable us to do live shows a lot more frequently and a lot more easily. And then we started doing, I think, talking telephone numbers was the first one. Great fun, live, and that became the forte of this place, live Saturday night transmissions. Full of adrenaline, particularly for those who are responsible. High profile, everything you'd want for. After talking telephone numbers, we did winning lines, which was more of the same. The next big shows we did were things like Pop Idol. We did the first Pop Idol, which is pre-X Factor, and that was done here. We did Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which was another first. We started here. That was going to be so much of a regular that they wanted to block the studio out, and we couldn't let them, so that moved off to Elstree. Pop Idol became X Factor, and then we've done plenty of other big shows, Test the Nation and the like. Yes, it was thrilling to find out that they wanted to shoot 1 or 2 Friends episodes in these studios. That's the American TV series Friends. When they came to London for Ross's wedding. That's it, Ross's wedding, that's it. I wasn't a particularly good fan of them, but you knew all the characters, and they shot it on film, on 35mm film, if I remember rightly, but we provided recording capabilities for the video feed, the director's video feed, so it's in black and white in NTSC, so they could edit it and things like this. Great fun, big names, it's fantastic time. Everybody was so thrilled. People were phoning up from all over the place trying to get tickets to the shows. It was really good, high profile to do something like that. I don't think there was as much difference as some people say between the operations of Limehouse and Fountain as the operation of the studios. The key criteria is selling the studios to your clients and having a happy and good environment for them to work in, which was the objective of both companies. I think it was more investment from Fountain TV, more capital expenditure and plenty of investment, which made the studios a lot more friendly and attractive place to come and work. Since Fountain acquired the site and refurbished the studios, technology moves on, which is a key thing, which means that the cameras which you did have now aren't suitable for whatever reason, so you have to buy new cameras, and quite often the recording equipment goes with it and all the infrastructure as well, vision mixers. And quite a few times over Fountain's time at these studios have we had to upgrade from components to digital, widescreen, and now high definition and beyond. So each step, it requires major investments and major commitments. And certainly whilst I was at Fountain, I found that the management were a lot keener to listen and understand what the problems were about remaining competitive in the market with all the latest technology, and we got it done. So in that sense, Fountain was a fantastic breath of fresh air to see what they could do with the studios and how they could develop it. One of the things that stays in my mind is how a good crew can all pull together. A classic example of this is the late 90s, I think it was, is when we had a tremendous downpour, some very heavy rain, and the road outside the front of the building flooded, all the drains blocked, and the water started pouring into the studios, into the restaurant and studios. And basically, the studios were going underwater. And all the crew pulled together to try and save kit, stem the flow of water, clean up afterwards, and try and save as much as we can of the building, which we did do. The whole of the ground floor needed to be refurbished afterwards, carpets and everything else like that, but on the day it was great to see how everybody was so keen to help, and instead of just saying, "Oh, it's nothing to do with me." Yeah, that is the sign of a good crew, a good, happy whole company, not just the technical crew, the whole company. Over the 20 years which Fountain have been here, as we have always tried to adapt to what our clients want and give them the best facilities we can, I think Fountain has always managed to satisfy the needs of most of our clients, to the extent that having a big studio, live transmission circuits, plenty of cameras, be able to do adapt to changes at short notice. The classic is when we were doing X Factor and ITV announced that ITV2 would be in HD, and currently we weren't expecting to do that, the ITV2 side of X Factor in HD. They gave us a few weeks' notice. We got something together, we got able to cover it in HD to satisfy the production requirements, even though it was news to the production company as well. I think that is the type of commitment which everybody in Fountain could give, the Fountain as a company and all the staff could give, that even at short notice we can do things which the bureaucracy would stop in many other situations. The key memories I've had over the years of working here are mainly a lot of the shows and how good fun they were to work on. One of the two things stand out. One of the more amusing, if you like, instance was one. There was a bus going past out the front, and somebody spotted an unattended bag on it, so it ground to a halt, and they called in the police, and the whole place was locked down as a bomb scare, maybe terrorist work. Some of our more enthusiastic crew decided, oh, it would be good if we could get some of this on video, maybe sell it to the news. So I happen to have my home video camera in the office. So one of them, who I won't name, decided to take it out of my office, go onto the roof, and half the crew pile onto the roof and shooting the video of police running around trying to sort this bus out, until one or two of the police looked up, saw people on the roof pointing something at them, so they came flying across the studio, round to reception, and demanded access to the roof in a panic way. And they went up to the roof, got everybody down, arrested half of them for being potential terrorists. And what annoyed me more than anything else was they confiscated my camera with the video of the early years of my eldest granddaughter. So I was trying to impress the police by being duly angry and shouting at the crew for being so naughty. So yes, they all got let off in the end, so it wasn't that disastrous. I think that the most memorable shows are the ones that push you to your limit, and maybe sometimes beyond. Wanting to do things which you didn't think were capable. With the technology of computers and graphics and interfaces and things like this, shows have progressed more and more complex, with, instead of just having cameras and lights and sound, it's now cameras, lights, sound and computers, and then special effects lighting, and then everything else. So there's no one program I can say which I found pushed us. It was most of them, and that's what makes it exciting. The best and worst part of it is when you're going live to the nation and you're watching, you knowing that anything that goes wrong now, 10 million people will see, maybe more, maybe less, which does make the adrenaline flow. And I think some of the early shows of when we were first going live, which would be things like talking telephone numbers and the like, they're the ones that, if you like, give you the best thrill. Once you've done the first one, it's not quite so much with the second, but still tremendous adrenaline. Even up to the moment I retired, there was the tension of live shows, knowing that if something happened and you were in the gallery, all the production persons turn around and look at you expecting a solution and an answer. Some of the most satisfying things I had in my time at Fountain was the recruiting of staff. I didn't actually enjoy the process of recruiting them, but when you pick people who you think are going to be good and successful, and then watch them grow in the company to be good and successful, and I feel that I contributed by offering them the opportunity to make them what they were, and then seeing most of them over time leaving and going on elsewhere and making a good career for themselves elsewhere in the industry, knowing they started with us. Working at the studios here has always been good fun, but it's only over time that you appreciate what good fun it is. What else I could be doing if I wasn't working here? What else do I want to do? I didn't. You know, I can sum up the feelings as basically working in a TV studio like this as awesome. It made me very sad to hear the news of the studios being sold, knowing that there was going to be no relocation of anything else. It was an end of an era. To think of all the hard work, sweat and tears, mainly my tears, that went into making this place what it is. It was everybody else's sweat, but my tears. It was a crying shame. To lose these facilities from the industry is bad enough. To lose such a good crew from the same industry is a tremendous shame. And it all boils down to, although I do understand it, profit before people.